friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. In each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back again. I am super excited. I get to talk to Ali Schilpp today, and she has I am very engaged by this lesson. I'm really curious to hear more about it because it sounds so awesome. But anyway, it's not about me, it's about you. Ali, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Why don't you take a second to tell people who you are and where you're from?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ali Schilpp. I am the media specialist at Northern Middle in Garrett County, Maryland. It is a small grade 6 to 8 school, rural in Appalachia. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I love it when we get to share with each other. Before we dive into the lesson, I'm just curious, how did you end up in school librarianship? Were you like I know this is what I want to do from the get-go, or was this sort of a roundabout?
This was a happy accident. I went to school for film, video, and theater.
Oh.
And my husband and I, that's where we met in college. And he actually got a job teaching high school at a magnet school in Baltimore. And I was so intrigued by teaching and volunteered at the theater I was working at, doing theater after school programs. And it just clicked. And I thought, this is exactly what I want to do. I work with kids. But I don't think I'm cut out for to be a classroom teacher. I didn't have that education background, but they loved and needed media specialists, people with technology background. So I was so fortunate to dive right into a master's program while I was a first-year school librarian.
Wow. It's funny. I never really thought about it, but there's quite a bit of overlap between theater and library in terms of, you're sort of performing, you're sort of, setting stages in your library space, making sure that the students are seeing the space the way you want them to see it. That's
Absolutely. I feel like it's a performance every day.
Oh, yeah.
And every librarian I meet has like a shtick. They have a specialty. They may have come from ELA, or they have like a science background, or like an alt hire like myself that wasn't even in education. And they have just a special something to bring to their library. For me, like I did a lot of puppetry, and I love to do readers theater and read aloud. So I feel like that's where I'm sort of quenching that theater. The thirst for theater.
And for middle school, like they're just all about like, can you give me a show? Give me a performance. So
yes.
That's such a great fit. So we're going to talk about a lesson that you're calling Mission Mars. And I'm just kind of curious, where did this lesson come from? Like, what was the genesis?
So this was the Global Read Aloud selection for 2023. And I just love the book. And I love to read with my students. I'm a big proponent of modeling reading with them and not just expecting them to take it and go. So I feel like when we can read together, it really sticks. Anytime I ask a student, what is a book that you love? More than not, they will say it's a book that we read together or something they read with their classroom teacher. So I'm really a big proponent of read alouds. And I'm also big on innovation projects. So my principal had asked me to explore other content areas, specifically science. So I thought with a rover story, you are digging into the research of the space unit. So instead of working with ELA, let me try working with science. So we hit all those media standards by doing research, and then of course the read aloud. And I also throw in my global connection because we are mailing postcards to people who are also reading the same book in the global read aloud. They set you up with people all over the world to send postcards to one each other. And it also incorporates Lego. I'm a Lego education ambassador.
Oh.
So if you come to my library, you'll see that all the books that are on display have a Lego to connect with it. So big on the books and the bricks. So this was a way for me to combine all of those things that I love to highlight two people what a media specialist and the library media program can do. You can do that with any content area, any book.
That's what I love is this is, often the library, the first thought is we're going to ELA and that you're going in a different direction, that you're going to science. I feel like science and math tend to be a little bit left out when it comes to library. So I love that this is a real direct connection. Like there's no question this is going to fit right in with the science curriculum. And it's such a great book that you're building with. And
Yes, and typically we do a STEM challenge with the students, and it can be done in any discipline. But it just makes sense to work with the science teacher to do the STEM, and she happens to also do First Lego League and has that background.
okay. Hmm.
So that within First Lego League, you always have an innovation challenge. So there's a research component. So depending on the year's theme, it could be anything. We love the one about helping animals. It's called Animal Allies Project.
Hmm.
So this one with the space of theme, you could just go. No, I would just went crazy with all things space. So
I am such a space nerd. I love the space program and learning about space. It's so great. One other thing before we jump into the lesson, I just have to note is the fact that you make reading social for your students. And I think it's so sometimes it gets overlooked the fact that reading is a social activity, even though we tend to do it alone a lot of the time. I love that you're reading with the students, that you're reading to the students, and that you're making connections between what you're reading and people other places, really emphasizing that social aspect of reading.
yes, well, I have to say there's a lot of talk about the science of reading right now. And
Hmm.
whether you are for it or against it, it's here. And instead of everyone always, they tend to just put all in on one and abandon other things that are working. I feel like we
Hmm.
can bridge this. So what I refer to it as is the library science of reading.
Ah.
So the science of reading is so dependent on elementary teachers. But what can we do at the middle school level to
Hmm.
support our readers? And what that is it's the vocabulary exposure. And
Yeah.
they don't comprehend what they're reading unless you have background knowledge, which is where the research component comes in.
Yes.
And then if you're connecting with other students that are also reading the book, like you mentioned, the social aspect and then the hands-on, it's just
Mm.
the comprehension for me. I It was hard not to notice how the comprehension of what the students were reading because they could relate it to the space unit with their teacher as well as the storyline
Hmm.
was very impactful.
Man, I love it. Hitting so many important elements of the educational process in the kids' heads.
Mhm.
So, okay, we're gonna get into Mission Mars. So, I am a student, and am I coming to your library? Am I coming? Am I going to
Oh,
see you in my
yes.
science room?
Absolutely. So the science teacher loves it's like a mini field trip. She comes to the library with all of her sixth graders. After we completed the read aloud, we had a day to plan. I presented all of the materials for the innovation. They knew that they were to design or craft a rover based on what they had learned about res in the story. And the goal was to make this rover move. And this was unplugged. We weren't coding or anything like that. Very
Okay.
simple makerspace supplies, such as straws, um, ping pong balls, a little Dixie cup, like a kitty cup. And were given a coin battery and a simple motor, and they would have to design it, but they couldn't do anything. They just had to look at it and make a plan with their partner. So that was a really good idea. Instead of just diving right into that, they made all kinds of modeling and sketches. Their teacher had talked about how modeling is so important in science, and they have an interactive notebook that they always refer to. So they were definitely used to that process. So that was very helpful. And
Hmm.
then on day two, when they returned to the library, then it was time to craft the rover. And that's when the magic all happened. And it's not easy, but every group is given the exact same supplies, with the exception of unlimited tape, which was a crowd pleaser. They love they love that they could just go crazy with tape. But as far you're given one battery, so you don't want to uh, use the motor's life up too quickly. So you want to pace yourself when you're
Oh.
testing it, and there's all kinds of things to consider. And many of them were spinning around in circles. How do you make it move forward? How can you engineer it to go forward instead of just in a circle? So lots of troubleshooting and working together. And it was not easy.
Oh, I bet.
And then we had like a racetrack set up, and they would get up with their group and they would test out their rovers. So we
Huh.
did that. We had a 60-minute period to do that. So everyone was given the exact same materials and time.
I love that the first element is, after you read the story, the first element is just planning, because I think it's so, there's this temptation to just say, okay, dive in. And I have found with my middle school students, they are not good at taking that minute to plan and just think about, what am I trying to accomplish? How am I trying to get from point A to point B? And so often they'll dive in, whether it's in writing an essay or working on a project or whatever it is, they dive in, and then after about 10 minutes, they're like, well, I don't know what to do next. Or like, I think I'm done. And it's like, no, I don't think you are.
No, I agree. And I am a very much like, let's just dive in kind of a person. But
Yeah.
I would, we were forced to just have a planning day because we've had some wild weather and we had a delay day. So we really only
Oh,
had 40 minutes. So it was perfect to say, let's just plan. And in the assignment that I gave them, it has the very first page is making your model rover. And you have to label what materials you're going to use. So that forced me also to slow down and let them have a plan. So when they came in, they could use that whole time to just craft their rover.
nice. Hmm. That's such a great idea. And it's sometimes it's those fortuitous happenstance situations that turn out to be the best element of the lesson you put together.
Yes. Yes.
I think I'm just realizing, I don't know if the title of the book that you do the read aloud with actually got mentioned. Can you give us the
Oh,
full title? Because I'm
yes.
thinking of it as the movie, and I think
Yes.
that
So
the
it's a
book is
rover
different.
story by Jasmine Warga. So
Right.
that was the global read aloud for upper to middle grade readers for this year. And it basically is a fictional rover named Resilience. And it's based after the real story that you know and love from NASA of
Hmm.
sending rovers to Mars. And it was it's a sad story. It was a crowd pleaser. Kids really loved it. I think the only negative feedback I got is that it ended so quickly because time has to pass.
Oh.
He spends a considerable amount of time on Mars, and Sophia is a sixth grader that starts off the book writing to him. It's just, and that's where the letters come in, and all of the feel good moments of the students also connecting with other readers with their postcards. So it encompasses all content areas. If he didn't even want to do an innovation challenge or connected to STEM, you could absolutely do it with your ELA classes.
I love it. It's so great when we've got those elements. And the library is so full of elements that are so ready to be cross-disciplinary if you're willing to just take that minute and think about, like, how might this apply in different ways.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. That this is, sure, we're looking at science, but there's lots of other connections too.
Yes.
So 2-day lesson, it sounds like.
Yes, just for the innovation challenge. Of course, reading the book took a lot more time than that.
Yeah.
Um, and you, of course, could do an innovation challenge with a book that is much shorter. This one I took on as I knew that it would be challenging because it was a lengthier book. So you're looking at about a 6.5 hour read.
Okay.
But you just do it over time, slowly. Normally, with an innovation project, I would read Beauty and the Beak, which is about a bald eagle that lost its beak, and they fabricate a beak from a 3D model.
Huh.
Uh, and so that's a picture book that can be read in one class. So the innovation project for that would be much shorter. But
Hmm.
because I connected with a science teacher and she kind of planned it all around her space unit, it worked. So it was throughout it was like 5 week um, time frame that you would need. But you can do it with much shorter books, and I highly recommend shorter, more concise books to get them into research and then to have an innovation challenge. Just
Hmm.
because the feedback is that kids love them. They're their favorite activity.
Oh yeah,
Is
when they get to do hands-on stuff,
Mhm.
uh,
Yes.
who doesn't love that? Is Beauty and the Beak nonfiction?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's yes. I'll put that in the show notes because that's what we
Yeah.
usually use for animal allies. What is something you can do? What can you innovate to help an animal's life, your interaction with them more positive? So that one, it's a perfect book to get kids thinking about what could I make or design that would help an animal and their
I,
livelihood.
I love the idea that although Jasmine Warga's book is fiction, it's based on nonfiction, it's based on real stuff that really happened. And your other innovation challenges based on nonfiction, like really helping the kids see that nonfiction can be a very engaging place to dig into books. totally coincidentally, I was just talking to Tom Bober about the 5 types of nonfiction and saying how, like, for me, nonfiction has been a weak point. I don't do a great job of getting across to the students how amazing some nonfiction is. And these are
Yes.
activities that can help them make those connections, not just in the library, but, across their subjects, and kind of see there's awesome, interesting stuff going on in all your subjects if you want to dig in a little bit.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that because when I was pursuing national board, I asked my principal, what is a need? What is something I can do to help the school wide goal? And it was informational text that, and the ELA teacher said, we do a great job with our fiction reading. We really need more informational text and nonfiction, just like you just
Mm-hmm.
said. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like that. So that was a challenge for me. And this is a challenge for me because this is not my first place to go, but I enjoy it so much. I love using real world stories so
Yeah.
much and then pairing them with fiction. It's like the best of both worlds. You don't have to abandon it and say we're exclusively nonfiction because this is what the kids need. You
Mm-hmm.
actually use that fiction and then add that research, and then you have it's this best combination of what everyone will love.
Yeah. And I mean, I can also see that being a great way to bring in some comparison and analysis for the students to say, like, okay, we read the fiction, we read the nonfiction, we've done the research. What's right or not right about the fiction that we read? And you could kind of even
Mm,
choose fiction depending on how close or far it gets from the
yes.
reality of the situation. Hmm. That's really fun. So were there any particular resources that obviously you had picked out a book for this, but were there any particular resources that kind of help you either conceptualize this or that you kind of chose specifically for this lesson?
So I did have a little help, like poking around, thinking of the Rovers Challenge. I did look for lessons that had already been done, like Makerspace and Innovation Challenge. And the one that I did use, I do share it here in the notes. Just using a simple battery and a motor was like just the best idea. Also, when I mentioned Lego, is we had the Lego rover displayed in the library, and then a student brought in one as well. Because in the
Oh,
story, there's two rovers. So the students were able to see the two characters in the library. And then all of these little rovers started to appear. We have like Fun Friday and it's open Lego table time, and everyone started creating their own little mini rovers. So I actually have like a display of rovers all over the library. They
oh,
just love
fun.
that. I know it's so cute when they show it to you and they say, "Will you display this?" And I say, "Oh my gosh, absolutely." So the top of all of our bookshelves is just Lego displays, and it could be anything, and then we just pair a book beside it.
Oh,
Kids
man.
really, really like that. So it's like being in a museum exhibit. It's like they create this Lego, and then it's special. You don't take it apart. You don't put it in the Fun Friday bin. It is exclusive to the display. So that is something that I highly recommend. Is always like adding something for a display, whatever you're reading. So I have, of course, had a lot of books about space everywhere in the library, and then
Mhm.
my decor was very space themed, and it just helps you get excited about what you're reading.
Oh, absolutely. And I love too that it gives the students that ownership of that sort of part of the library. Like, not only can I come here, but like this is my part of the library.
Yes, exactly.
They must get so into that. Oh man, I can picture it in my head. I'm hoping to get a good Lego space going in my library sometime
Oh
soon.
yes, yes. And I'll send you pictures of them with their rovers because
Oh
they're too
yeah,
adorable. Yes.
I would love to see that. So, how long have you been doing this lesson?
It is my first year doing it.
Okay.
This was the first choice for Global Read Aloud this year, and it was also, it's just a very popular book, as it should be.
Hmm.
But I mean, in years past, I would have picked any book and done something similar. But
Hmm.
this one I think is going to stick. The teacher has asked, "Can we please read this same book and do this same activity next year?" She absolutely loved it. So
That's
while I
awesome.
always like to change it up and I'm on to the next thing, this one is definitely gonna stick with it for next year.
I mean, if your teachers are asking for it to become part of their regular practice, you know you're doing something right.
Yes, yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
What about the
There's a
student? Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
there's another book too for your older readers that, A Work in Progress by Jarrett Lerner, I highly recommend. I was, definitely on the fence. my recommendation would be Rover Story was perfect for our sixth graders, and A Work in Progress would be ideal for seventh. Seventh grade is such a challenging year for students, and that book I think would be perfect. So I'm looking into as we move forward into the spring of doing that one with my seventh graders.
That is literally sitting on top of my TBR pile. It's next in the list when I get through the one I'm working on
You're
now.
Gonna love it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've been hearing about it. I won't go off. We could talk books all week, I'm sure, but
yes.
So the teacher that you were working on this with seemed to really enjoy it and think it was valuable.
Yes.
Did you get any feedback from other teachers? Is this something that might, like, other science teachers might potentially be looking at, or?
Well, it's funny you say that because we are a very small school. She is the sixth grade science teacher.
Okay, gotcha.
But I have worked much more with the eighth grade science teacher. Like I said, it's just trying to bridge a little gap there with the science. Like, as you mentioned, they're not included as much. So it's such a novelty, and they really love and appreciate the collaboration. So
that's great.
Yeah.
It's great when the teachers can recognize that you're giving them that value add to what they're doing.
We did do after the Rover challenge, we did a Google form and asked the students of their honest feedback about the read aloud, about writing postcards to other students, and what were the challenges of the Rover. And they tell you exactly how they feel. And so it's really good because I explained to them next year when we do this with our incoming sixth graders, what would you recommend? What would make it even better? So that was very good.
I'm curious, what kind of feedback did you get from the students?
Well, some of them wanted the challenge to be easier. And that's the whole point of it, is that it's supposed to be a challenge. And we truly are just facilitators. I tried so hard not to give them too much or give it away, because I wanted them not to struggle, but to figure it out. And when they did, I don't know, they were jumping up and down when it would move forward. Yeah. They were chanting. They gave each of their rovers names, because that's very important in the story, the naming of the rover. We had a leaderboard. They were so into it. So I feel like you do have to just step back a little bit. You can give them little pointers about design and things like that, but that's what makes it truly a challenge. You shouldn't give it away for them.
Right. Oh, no, absolutely. It's important for them to struggle sometimes, because that's how we learn, is through the struggle.
And I had a student who wrote, "This was the best day of my life." Now, I know that's a little exaggeration, but I'll take it. I showed that to the teacher, and I was like, yeah, I think he just really loved the liberty of getting up out of his seat and just trying it out and working with his friends and being successful. His rover actually went the farthest. So
nice.
He was thrilled. Yes.
What a great learning opportunity for students. I love it. Are there any ways that you might differentiate or sort of adjust for students that have maybe different ability levels as you were doing this?
Oh, absolutely. So all the information that we share, I have Immersive Reader, and we worked with every student. So students of all ability levels were able to complete this mission and work together. We definitely are very thoughtful about pairing students if they needed more assistance. And of course, the teacher, having this science teacher and myself there, we're there to assist anyone.
Right. I imagine there's a lot of walking about and making sure things are staying on track.
Yes. Yes.
So having this being the first time you did it, I imagine we all learn from experience. We all kind of learn as we do. Are there any things that you are thinking about for next year around? Like, maybe we'll do this slightly differently this way?
I think timing can just be challenging. We did lose a couple of collaboration time. Again, we have really wild weather here. So you have to work with someone who's very flexible. So I think going into it is, if you're going to pick a book that takes a long amount of time, it's just that their plans can't be, in stone, that you don't want to drag the book out too long, because then it kind of loses the magic when it gets too lengthy, where you're reading it for too long. So as long as you are and the collaborative teacher are okay with that, I feel like I could never have enough batteries or motors, because I had enough for all of the groups, but they don't always work. We had a couple of ones that didn't even work at all from the get. So moving forward, I have already bought multiple packages of motors and batteries. And There's no
Oh,
tape left in our town. I bought all the tape. Yeah.
uh, are those
So,
supplies that come out of the library budget? Are they science budget? I'm just in my
yes.
head. I'm kind of
So
thinking,
yes. So they were very inexpensive. We also have a very generous robotics teacher
oh,
who recommended the motors initially, and he got us started on them. So
nice.
yeah, it's very nice.
Great cross-disciplinary possibilities with your robotics teacher, with your science teacher, with maybe your ELA teachers. So many great ways that you're tying this into all these different things the kids are going to be involved with. Since you only did this for the first time and you're kind of thinking about ways you're going to work on it next time around, what advice would you have for somebody who, like, this is their first time, they've heard what you've had to say, this sounds like an amazing lesson, I know I want to try it, I know others are going to want to try it. What are some things for the first timers that we might want to have at the fore of our minds as we get ready to do this?
I actually would suggest they do a picture book, such as The Beauty and the Beak, just to try it out. So their time commitment, they can see, is this a good fit for my students? Is this something that they would enjoy doing?
Oh, that's a great
And then
idea.
maybe move into a book, a novel that's much lengthier, more involved. But I have lots of books that I read that are that are short, that you could really do something that still have that maker space, that innovation project.
Okay.
Like with blackout poetry, like you could read
Mm.
so many books that involve blackout poetry and then have that activity. You're looking at, you can read within the first hour and then they can come back and actually create something. So I have lots of sample lessons on my Wakelets, where I pair the book and then show the activity that we do.
Awesome.
So I would recommend, yes, just something that isn't, if you're just starting out on an innovation challenge, to start with that picture book and then move and then do an innovation challenge.
That's a great idea. That's not. It makes total sense, and yet it would not have occurred to me. I appreciate that piece of insight there. Awesome. Well, okay. So we've had an awesome conversation about this amazing lesson that I am super excited to try and get going with my kids. But now we're going to go in a completely different direction, and we're going to have our book break.
Book break. Squiddy.
Oh, okay.
So, book break is you get to share any title you like. Could be personal, professional, could be for yourself, for your students, for your staff, whatever. Any kind of book you want to share with folks. What's the title you want to throw out there?
Okay, so this is so difficult for me because I can't just pick one, but
Oh, I know,
because
right?
we're
Like
on a
picking your favorite
space
child.
theme, I have to give a shout out to one of my favorite authors, Erin Entrada Kelly, and her book
Okay.
We Dream of Space.
Ah,
So that is a book that I read with a book club a couple years ago, and we were on Author Fan Face Off with her. I just think she is a magical being, and again, for a student that really loved a rover story, I was able to recommend We Dream of Space to them. We Dream of Space is special to me because as a child, I witnessed the Space Shuttle Challenger, um, the unfortunate event that took place there. It's all historical fiction now, which makes me laugh because I'm thinking I am now
I know.
historical fiction.
Yeah.
And I've had students do History Day projects about the Space Shuttle Challenger, and I've been a primary source. So I have
Huh.
lots of connections to growing up on the Space Coast, and my connection to space a little bit. So that I would definitely give a shout out to her. And she was such a generous author. She actually sent books to the students that were on the author fan face off of hers. She sent them books
Wow.
personally and personal letters.
How nice.
I know. She's wonderful. I love her. And a book set that's coming out that's been around that we as librarians love is Mr. Lemoncello's uh, library. If you're familiar with Chris Grabenstein, he is one of my favorite authors of all time. And his books are now being made into graphic novels. So I just purchased the set
Oh.
of the book one for my book club. And I am able to just send him an email and he responds within the hour. I had some questions from some uh, readers who are fans and he got right back to us. So I'm excited to especially see book two because my son, Elliot, is a character in his books. Chris
What?
Grabenstein included, yes. So when my oldest son was in the seventh grade, he visited our school, Chris did, and he named a character after my son. And he will continue to live on, not only in the novels, but in the graphic novel that's coming out. So I'm so excited to see it. And his name
That's
is spelled
incredible.
correctly. You know, sometimes they add a character, but they switch it up. But his name is, we have a very unique name. So he is the one and only Elliot Schilpp, and he will be in that book. So it's just so fun because kids will say, is that your son? Or did you know that there's a Schilpp in this story? So I'm really excited about that because anytime a book is made into like a graphic novel, it gives it new life. So the Limoncello series is very popular, but then it will hone in on my graphic novel readers and they'll get to experience the story all over again and love it. So,
Man,
yes.
I didn't even realize it was coming out as a graphic novel. That's great.
Yeah, so it just came out in November. And then within the next few years, you'll see the others in the series in
That's
graphic
awesome.
novel form. I know, I'm so excited.
Oh,
And I'm
man.
very excited to receive the advanced reader copy of John Shu's book, Louder Than Hunger. I'm very, yes. So those are some books that I read in the past that I'm currently reading and can't wait to read in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the book recommendations. Thank you for the awesome lesson and the great pointers. I am so excited we got to have this conversation. Hopefully we can do it again sometime, but thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you, Steve. You're such a bright light in the library world. I greatly appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for checking out this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only a link to the lesson, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be good, and be well.